Rex, if you could, let's start with the Twister and just kind of go over the evolution of the product from where it started, its origination, to where it is today.
Okay. So our original, very first machine we ever built was a machine we called the MPU 2650. It was a 50 horsepower, 26-inch wide machine that kind of started the business off for us. And didn't take long before we realized there was an easier way to do this. And it was a very intensive machine to manufacture. So we, nobody knows the weaknesses more than the manufacturer. So we went through, redesigned everything. And what came out of it was a twister. And we named that the Twister because the arms that hold the blade arms would articulate and twist, if you will, and allow the blade to stay flat on the floor. And so over time, what we had to deal with was the changing environment for the engines themselves. So we were buying EPA and CARB compliant engines, and each year for the last 23 years that they've become more and more stringent, which would knock out the ability to use the engine that we were currently using. So they would just disable that engine, and they would provide you with something else. So I can't say that it's been fun, but it's certainly been entertaining because, each time we get a new engine, we have to re-engineer the wiring harnesses, cowlings, exhaust systems. We have to do a lot of things just to comply with with the stringent requirements that the motor manufacturers give us. But with that, we get more efficient operation. We get higher efficiency on the emissions. We get, one of the things that we get each year is a little bit better instrumentation. So, initially when we first started, we had the 4 major engine monitoring devices, which in the late 90s was an oil pressure, coolant temperature, oil pressure, things like that. So now we can have RPM, have the check engine light. The gauge will tell you what possibly what the check engine light is. Why is it coming on? Kind of a diagnostic tool. So they are getting more sophisticated, but as things get a little bit better, then it's easier for the end user to be ensured that we're going to have good compliance on the emissions. Go ahead.
What's the time frame? When did you build your first Twister to today? So how many years of experience do you have behind the current version of the Twister?
Okay, so the first Twister we built was probably in the year 2000, 99 to 2000, and we used a little Ford engine on that. And at that time, we were able to install our own fuel management system. And then, early on after that, probably 2003, 2004, the EPA stepped in and said, no, if these fuel systems have to be certified. And so that kind of knocked us out of all of that. You have to buy an engine that's already pre-certified. So over the years, since the year 2000, we've seen so many different changes that it's hard to keep track of, but we've learned to document a lot better in the last 10 to 15 years than we did 20 years ago, that's for sure.
So it sounds like government regulations have really, forced the evolution of the Twister and other machines as well to bring it to today's standards and what would somebody see today as the modern day Twister.
But that's true. We never welcome change. I mean, I wish I could still buy that original engine because they just lasted forever. We just didn't really have any problems with that at all. There's some of them out there that are still going strong, and they're rebuildable. Some of the later engines that we were forced into, we used a Hyundais and a Nissan and a couple of different models of Fords and things. Parts are a little harder to find for those Asian engines and things, unless you can figure out what kind of car they might go to. But as a general rule, we don't really have issues with the engines themselves. We have issues with maybe just the maybe a regulator or something, sensor or something like that. Just like on a vehicle, as long as you take care of it, it'll last a long time.
So if I haven't seen a twister in the last 5 or 6 years, tell me what the most recent advances are in technology that make today's twister better than something 4 or 5 years ago. I mean, technology in lots of different areas is just progressing at an exponential rate, to where whatever equipment it is, people are seeing technology today that just didn't exist 2 or 3 years ago. So tell us a little bit about the twister today and how that's different from if I owned a twister 5 years ago.
Okay, so the twister machine is, whenever we initially built the twister, that was one of our very first machines, and we thought that everybody needed this big, 4,500-pound machine. So we just expected everybody to use that machine on everything, the VCT, carpet, things like that. And so the customers that we were selling to were primarily doing VCT and carpet. But as soon as the industry got more involved in the ceramic tile with our equipment, we started seeing a lot of failures on wheel motors. And so probably 5, 6, 7 years ago, we started employing a different style wheel motor, which goes from a gerotor style motor to a piston motor. And so a lot heavier duty, a lot more money, but we literally have not had a failure since we've been using those. And I want to say we've been using those somewhere between 5 and 8 years. And so those customers that have the older style twisters and that we're doing VCT and carpet, they'll never ever have a problem with that. But whenever you have guys that primarily do demolition with the big shopping malls with some of the really tough modified thin sets and epoxy grout and things like that, and the twister really goes in there and it takes a really hard beating on the wheel motors, and they would fail before. But we do not have failures on those at all.
So tell me a little bit specifically what applications you recommend for the twister. I mean, obviously you've got 5 different machines, 3 propane, 2 battery. Where would you most likely see a twister in an application environment?
Most of the time, I don't try to sell or upsell the twister unless their primary goal is, whenever they get to a job site, they want to be able to 100% take anything on at any given time, and they want no reservations of going on the job site. Okay, are we going to have the equipment that's going to knock this out and take care of it for a shot? Now, with that said, every machine we build will do any floor that's out there, but there's not anything going to be, give you the production that you really are looking for, especially on the ceramic tile and some really hard wood flooring. So if a guy calls in and he says he's looking for something to do, a lot of ceramic tile, then I will steer him towards that twister every time. We do have the guys, okay, but for the cost of the twister, we could buy 2 of your smaller machines and run them both at the same time, and we would have double the production. Well, no, not really, because the twister has a lot more weight, a lot more power, and amenities to help you get that stuff up. If you're doing really large areas, if you have an open store that's an empty Walmart, then yeah, you're obviously going to be able to travel faster, use a wider blade, and get more done. And so that was where we would upsell to the twister. But if you're not doing those really hard things and the hardwood floors and ceramic tile in large quantities, then let's step down and go to a Hurricane. A lot more economical, and it's a lot easier to haul down the road on a trailer because it's just not so heavy.
Okay. Anything else about a twister that we'd like to highlight?
Just looking over the years, all of the manufacturers out there, and I can only say for what we've had to deal with, but the availability of a lot of the components that we use fluctuates from year to year. So, where we might see a hydraulic pump take 2 to 3 weeks to get our hands on, a half a dozen of them or a dozen. Those things have changed, and so we have to allow about 6 months for some of our hydraulic pumps to come in. And we found that there are some international companies, a lot of Italian pumps, European models, pumps that we use are a little bit smaller packages than what some of the components made in the States are. Literally half the size, physical size. They're a very good pump. So the industry has forced us to be able to react to, okay, this time it was 2 weeks to get it, and now it's going to be 6 to 8 weeks. So we have to use a different style pump. So we are able to use a pump now that we can get in stock. We usually have 10 to 20 of those pumps in stock at any given time, and they give us extremely good drivability on the equipment. And so we try to stay with that, but whenever we're looking at any of the other smaller components like a hydraulic cylinder, it's not that no operator is going to be able to tell the difference between a cylinder that may be painted black versus red or something. But those hydraulic pumps are something that we have over the many years of doing this. Yeah, we can throw just about anything we want in there, but we have found some stuff that really has a lot better drivability than some of the stuff that our competitors might be using, or some of the stuff that's readily available at just about any hydraulic store, you might say. So we found what really works for this equipment and what works for this industry, and we really try to stick with it.